if you watched videos, I think it was 39 and 40, I came up with a relationship for the weight on the rear wheel, which is along the x-axis or the horizontal axis, versus the rear wheel deflection in millimeters up the y-axis or the vertical axis. And so this is my spring performance. So basically the shape is determined by the linkage, but the spring deflection in kilograms per millimeters gives you the slope. So if you can imagine, previously I had a 6 kilogram millimeter spring, so it was very steep, and now I've got an 8.5 kilograms a millimeter spring, which is a lot flatter. And so if I put 10 kilograms of wheel preload, and remember the relationship's about 1.8, so 10 kilograms of wheel preload is about 18 kilograms of shock preload. And then, so that starts the start of the curve. So the curve won't move until I hit 18 kilograms on my shock, and then you'll start to track up this curve here. So my race sag, so my weight is probably just myself and the bike on the rear wheel. You're talking about 150 to 170 kilos. So that's why I put 2 dots this time, or I'm showing a range. And you want about a third, 80 millimeters. So the blue dot is right on the curve, and the grey dots are showing what the bike will actually behave like according to an 8.5 kilogram spring. So you can see that I reckon that's pretty good. I'm right in the range of that sag for my race sag. If I come further down the curve, the bike static sag is 92 to 100 kilos, 24 millimeters, which will give you a blue dot down here. So you can't, it's actually very difficult to achieve static sag and race sag. So I think the recommendation I would make is set the shock for your race sag, which is the rider plus the bike, and then your static sag is just what it's going to be. So theoretically I should be 24 millimeters, but in reality it's going to be, what's that, about 40 to 45 millimeters according to the curve I've now got for my spring weight. And then when I come up to my touring, I call it my touring sag. So my touring sag's about 200 to 220, which is the orange dots. In the middle of that is about 105. So when I've got all my gear loaded in touring mode, my bike will be sagging about 105 millimeters, which is quite a lot, because then you're only 50 millimeters off the rubber, but you're still a fair way away from the bottom of the shock. But it will change the behavior above that point. I call it the limit of proportionality point. So the shock behaves on this blue line with the spring, and then when it hits that point there, which is the top of your rubber bumper, you get your rubber bumper plus your shock, so your line will actually go a bit flatter. Not a lot flatter, but a little bit flatter. And so that blue, as I said, that blue line is my curve. If I set 10 kilogram wheel preload, which is 18 kilogram shock preload, I'll get almost right through my race sag, so that's a pretty good setting. And 10 kilograms, not a lot, so it'll be nice and soft before it kicks in. So design, if I was designing for 18 kilogram shock preload, which again is 10 kilograms wheel, so that'd be about 2.1. So I'd want to put about 2.1 millimeters on my shock when I installed it to get my preload right. Now you can see here I put some sensitivities. If I put 11 kilograms on the wheel, which is about 20 kilograms on the shock, you get 2.4, so you're not talking about hardly any distance. And then if I put 14 kilograms on the wheel, which is 25 kilograms shock, I get about 3 mil. So you can see there it's not that sensitive in millimeters to the sensitivities in your preload. So my shock adjustment, what I'm saying is somewhere between 2.1 and 3. I'll probably set it about 3, so I can cater for a decent touring sag. I don't want it sagging too much when I'm touring, so I'll set it at 3 mil, which will be 14 kilograms on the wheel, So it will shift the curve this way by about 4 kilograms, which is nothing. So the curve will just sit under that blue dot, which will be perfect. Okay, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to put on 3mm on my shock, and that'll be my race sag set properly. And then once I get the bike assembled, I can actually check that it is giving me that 80mm of sag with me on it, and it should give me about 40 to 45mm with the bike just by itself. So I can measure that point of 45mm, and I can measure that point of 80mm, and that should be what the bike actually does sag on for that preload. And as I said, the calculation is really easy. You just draw the line and then work out your preload. I've actually got it in a spreadsheet, so it's pretty easy. Right, let's go and put it on the bike. So here's the rear shock in the bike. All the weight is off the back wheel. So I've got the weight off the back wheel, and the shock spring is loose. So basically, I've calculated I needed about 2.5mm spring tightening to give me my preload. So just take it down till the slack has gone in the spring, just enough to make it so it looks like it's lost its slack. A little bit of fiddling about. It's pretty good there. Now what I want to do is I want to measure 2.5mm from there to there and wind it down by that amount. So I'll just get the measuring stick, as it's called, and the distance at the moment is exactly a little bit tight in here with one hand. So that measurement is about 25.7 with the slack taken off it. So I'll get I'll just move that down about 2.5mm, and that will give me my required 20 kilograms preload on the shock. So let me wind that down 2.5mm. And then that's the preload set. Right, so there's the preload on the shock, about 2.5mm, and that will give me enough preload to help with the sag. I'll measure the sag once I get it off, and I can always adjust it again. It's pretty easy to adjust. So let's get the airbox back in. You notice I've taken the tank off as well, just to give me some more room. So I'll just get the airbox back in with the tank off, and then that's this job finished. Right, there's the airbox in. That wasn't too bad. Just starting to encroach on gynecology territory. They slip the front bit on first there, and then this box just sits, and then you slip the airbox through at a sort of angle and go through. And then 1, 2, 3 bolts around the other side. The actual hardest bit, and I probably didn't do this right, is this breather tube here, where it connects in there. You can probably just see it. That one there, you can see that. It needs a clip put in, and I think the way to do that is probably do it before the airbox goes in, I didn't do it before the airbox goes in. It's a bit of a pain to get that clip in there. The trouble is I'd had all that rubber seated and all lined up, so I spent a little bit of time putting that on after the event. But I think the best way to do that is probably put it on as the box is coming through, and then it just sits on as the rest of it's in place. So there's a little trick if you want to do that next time. But that's the airbox in, all tightened up. Shock preload set. As I said, you can get into the preload if I want to adjust it again. It's not too bad. And so that's the rear end finished. I'll just bolt it all up now.